Real estate commissions are finished. 6% commissions are no more, and real estate agents are going broke. I'm not kidding when I tell you that these are just a few of the many headlines that have popped up over the past few weeks in response to the National Association of Realtors settlement. There is a ton of misinformation and confusion surrounding this particular topic. And if you've clicked on this video, first of all, I just want to applaud you, because that means that you are taking the time to do your research and get accurate information so that you understand what is going on with this entire situation. It's extremely important to me that I help you understand the facts. So in this video, we're going to talk about the origin of the NAR lawsuits, the proposed settlement, and changes that, if approved by a judge, could take place as soon as July of 2024, and also talk about how all of this may affect buyers, sellers, and realtors. I'm really going to encourage you to watch the entire video to get a really good understanding of exactly what is going on and the facts of the settlement. As always, I'm encouraging you to put your questions in the comments and let me know how I can best serve you with all of this information that I'm providing. And if we haven't met yet, my name is Stacey Russell, your Northwest Houston Realtor, educating buyers, sellers, and investors on all things real estate. If you find value in this video, please do me a favor and hit that like icon, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I absolutely love making videos for you and being a resource for all of your real estate needs. So today's topic is a big one, and one that I am sure that you have heard a lot about. So we are just going to dive straight into it. Let's go ahead and start with the origin of how this NAR settlement came to be. All of this actually stems from a class action lawsuit where sellers in Missouri decided to sue the National Association of Realtors, along with some other really big named brokerages like Anywhere, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Keller Williams, and RE/MAX. So the sellers in this case were claiming that commission rates were too high, that the buyer's representation was too much money, and that the MLS, along with NAR and the corporate defendants, inflated commission, which violates antitrust laws. In October of 2023, the jury ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and ordered NAR and the named brokerages to pay $1.78 billion in damages. Originally, NAR had planned to appeal this verdict. However, March 15th of 2024, we got information that NAR was going to be settling. NAR states that they considered a wide range of legal options, including finding a settlement and continuing to appeal the original lawsuit, while at the same time dealing with copycat lawsuits that were popping up across the nation. And they really decided that if they continue to appeal and fight these copycat cases, that ultimately it would lead to them filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy and leaving their members, associations, MLSs, and brokerages exposed. The proposed agreement would resolve claims against NAR, over 1 million NAR members, all state, territorial, and local realtor associations, all association-owned MLSs, and all brokerages with a NAR member as a principal that had a residential transaction volume of $2 billion or less in the year 2022. Under the terms of the proposed agreement, NAR would agree to pay $418 million over the course of 4 years, and we will be seeing some changes to our real estate industry that could be happening as soon as July. It's important to know that the settlement is subject to court approval, and as of today, March 29th, there has been no motion to approve the settlement. So let's talk about what these proposed business changes are. There are really 3 main business practice changes that could take effect as early as July of 2024. However, I really only hear people talk about 2 of them, and the third one is actually really important to both buyers and realtors. So currently, when a realtor goes onto the MLS, we can scroll down and see exactly how much compensation will be paid to the buyer's broker. However, with this settlement, there will be a new MLS rule that prohibits the offer of broker compensation on the MLS. I want to be really clear. This does not mean that a seller is not allowed to offer a buyer-broker commission. It just means that it is not going to be allowed to be promoted on the MLS. However, if I have a client who is selling their house and they are more than willing to pay a buyer's agent commission, I am allowed to put that information on anything that has nothing to do with the MLS. So I can put that information in an email blast to different agents in my community. I can put that on my website that I have specifically designed for my listing. I can put that on my sign writer where it says for sale, and right above it, it says 3% or 2% or 1% buyer commission offered. I just can't put it in the MLS or anything that is affiliated with the MLS, including Showing Smart and Showing Time. Additionally, seller contributions are still allowed to be promoted in the MLS. They just are not allowed to be described as commissions or compensation. So that's the first change. And the second change is going to be a big one for buyers and realtors. NAR has agreed to enact a new rule that would require MLS participants that are working with buyers agents to have a signed buyer-tenant representation agreement with their clients before you show any home in person. What this means for buyers is that they will no longer be able to reach out to a real estate agent and expect a very quick tour of a home. Now, when a buyer wants to see a property in person, the realtor will have to review and explain the 5-page buyer-tenant representation agreement with their potential client and make sure that we get everything filled in and signed. This legally binding contract is actually a good thing to have up front if you are a buyer or a realtor, because not only does it discuss the term of the contract and the obligations of the broker and the buyer's agent, but it also discusses commission as well. I already have a listing agreement video up on my YouTube channel, but I plan to create a buyer-tenant representation agreement video where I break down all of the different details and pages of that agreement so that you can see exactly what you will need to be signing. However, my best guess is that with all of these changes coming, we will probably have some version of this document tweaked, so I will make sure to keep you updated on that. So here's my PSA. Buyers, please do not sign this document without reading it and having your agent explain it to you. I know that as a buyer, there are times where we get really excited when a property pops up on the market and we want to go and see it immediately. And that's totally fine. But if you want to be represented by a real estate agent, make sure that that agent is going to review the buyer-tenant representation agreement with you before you sign it so that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. The third business practice change that not a lot of people are talking about is that the commission that is agreed upon by the realtor and the buyer that is laid out in the buyer-tenant representation agreement prevails any compensation that a seller is willing to pay a buyer's agent. So here's an example. If my compensation with a client that is a buyer is 2% in the buyer-tenant representation agreement, but we find a property where the seller is willing to pay me 3%, I am not allowed to make 3%. I am only allowed to make the 2% that is outlined in my buyer-tenant representation agreement. Obviously, this can be very frustrating to realtors because, I mean, let's face it, if you had the opportunity to make an extra percent on something and the seller is the one who's paying it, not even your client, why wouldn't you jump at that opportunity? But under this new change, realtors are going to be capped at exactly what is outlined in the buyer-tenant representation agreement. And one area where I can see this getting a little bit hairy and it hasn't been clearly defined is new construction. There are many home builders who will pay a buyer's agent an additional commission for bringing a buyer. Just in the last few weeks, I've actually seen 5 to 6% commission from builders for bringing a buyer to them. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets handled. So obviously there are still a lot of kinks that need to be worked out before these changes go into effect, but regardless of the changes and when they occur, buyers, sellers, and realtors will be impacted by these changes. For sellers, the national attention that this lawsuit and settlement has been given is actually going to help sellers be able to have good conversations with realtors. Commissions have always been negotiable, but now that people have it all over the news and in their face, they are going to understand moving forward when they speak to a real estate agent that that is something that they are allowed to bring up. It always has been, but unfortunately there are people in our industry who almost make it seem like 6% is the standard, or if that is somebody's perception, we're not going to change it. And I think sellers are going to be more comfortable having these kinds of conversations with their realtors and selecting the best realtor for the job. Personally, I believe that savvy sellers will continue to pay buyer agent commission. Ultimately, offering broker compensation to a buyer's agent is going to be a point of leverage to attract more buyers and help your home sell quickly. So now let's shift to what the impact could be for buyers. And this is a really tricky one because there are a lot of possible implications and a little bit more work up front. But first of all, if a buyer chooses to be represented by a realtor, you're going to want to interview different agents to make sure that you are working with someone who knows exactly what they are doing and someone who you trust to represent you fully. Another potential issue for buyers is that buyers may be forced to decide if they can financially afford to be represented by a buyer's agent. During a real estate transaction, the buyer already has to pay things out of pocket like earnest money, option fees, and for the inspection. They have to pay all of that up front, but that also doesn't include the down payment and all of the closing costs that some buyers, especially first-time buyers, are having to scrape together to get to the closing table. And if you add a realtor commission on top of that, buyers may choose to go directly to the listing agent instead of hiring their own representation. This is not a good move, and it can be harmful to buyers because the listing agent only represents the seller. That is it. Anything that a buyer says or does can be used against them when it comes to negotiating a deal. And yes, I have heard the argument that real estate attorneys could help the buyers, and that's actually always been true and always been an option. But here's the thing: real estate agents only get paid when the transaction closes. Attorneys typically want things paid up front. So yes, that attorney will write that contract for you, but it's going to be an upfront fee. An attorney is not going to take the time to establish rapport with a listing agent, negotiate for you, attend inspections, or remind you of the many different things that happen in the timeline from contract to close. And even if they do offer those services, I can almost promise you that all of them are going to want to be paid upfront. Ultimately, a buyer could end up spending more money to hire an attorney than they would have to just interview different real estate agents, negotiate a commission, and be properly represented from the beginning of the process. And my last point for the impact on buyers is geared towards VA buyers. VA buyers are not allowed to pay a commission to a buyer's agent as part of the terms of their loan. And the whole topic of how VA buyers are going to be able to buy a home without paying a real estate agent has yet to be addressed yet. I know that there are a lot of people out there who do not care one way or another about the implications that this is going to have on real estate agents. But since this is my livelihood and a career that I absolutely love, I want to take a minute to explain how this will impact us. First of all, we are going to have more upfront, open conversations with our clients, whether those clients are buyers, sellers, investors, or renters, and we are going to have to prove the value that we bring. We're going to need to educate our clients on the listing agreement and the buyer-tenant representation agreement, and encourage our clients to ask questions before those documents are signed. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it gave you a better understanding of the NAR lawsuit, as well as the settlement and potential changes that could impact buyers, sellers, and realtors. Let me know your thoughts, opinions, and questions in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.